Hello! In this video, I want to explain what is so bad about Trump's foreign policy, especially when it comes to Greenland. Okay, well, let's first start by hearing actually Michael Knowles do a defense of Trump's foreign policy, and then I'll react.
Been the policy of the United States in 1803 to manage the Western Hemisphere. So that that's a cornerstone of American foreign policy. I think it is charming that Dave is defining America first in the way that he prefers, and I think there are plenty of people who wish to do that. But Dave, though a very popular podcaster, never won a presidential election, and Trump has been clear on what he means by America first, the political movement that he built, that people voted for in his coalition since the beginning. President Trump campaigned the first time around on destroying ISIS. So obviously that does not mean that America is only going to look inward. President Trump has carried out attacks, military operations that were extremely successful in Iran, in Syria, in Afghanistan, obviously in Venezuela. He's been talking about taking Greenland and even invading America's evil top hat, Canada, though I think he's mostly joking about that one.
Okay, let me just start by a simple observation. Michael Knowles tells us that Trump has been very clear about what does America first mean. That's probably the most untrue statement I heard in the last like 5 years. So what I do see is a lot of Trump supporters having their own interpretation of what that means. For example, some people claim that actually Trump wants to focus more on fighting China and helping Taiwan. That's why he's abandoning Ukraine. But the problem with that statement is we actually never hear Trump make that statement. So I do think that on the one hand, there are multiple people fighting within the Trump coalition for what is going to happen. For example, the CIA seems to want to help Ukraine, and they are still providing Ukraine with intelligence data. But people like Stephen Miller actually want to abandon Europe and focus more on acquiring Greenland and intervening in Venezuela. So yeah, the message of the Trump regime has been anything but clear. I mean, definitely, I think from the perspective of a lot of American Trump voters, this policy has been a betrayal of what they believed Trump will do. And yeah, also, so what's so bizarre about Trump's current foreign policy? So Trump seems to be in favor of interventionism in Central and Latin America, perhaps in Eastern Asia. America still has a strong military presence in the South China Sea. He also seems to be in favor of helping Israel, which is ruining the reputation of America in most of the world, in most of the countries of the global South, and definitely in the Muslim world. Then America also seems to be happy to intervene in Africa. So pretty much the only area in the world, it seems, where Trump wants isolationism is Eastern Europe. And what's so bizarre about it is the fact that that's probably the only area in which American intervention is completely on the side of international law. And no American troops are actually on the ground in Ukraine, which also means that in that area, the U.S. is not risking the lives of their soldiers, and they're actually enforcing international law, the principle of territorial integrity, which you could argue is in the interest of all civilized nations, protecting the territorial integrity, and it also weakens Russia. It also forces them not to intervene in other areas of the world where America appears to have interests. Okay, let's continue.
Since the beginning. So that's what that means. And what it comes down to is that America is a global empire. We just are. People can be upset about that, but unless your geopolitics comes strictly from Reddit, if your geopolitics actually comes from history, you recognize that we've been an empire since the Louisiana Purchase, okay? And we've been a muscular global empire since the Second World War. So President Trump's vision, I think, actually rejects two extremes. It rejects a conservative isolationism, and it rejects a liberal internationalism, and it posits a conservative imperialism that says that we are going to recognize our role in the world, but we are going to pursue that role in limited ways with America's interest at heart. So there's been no regime change in Venezuela. We're talking about regime change in Venezuela. The regime is still in place. What we did was depose the leader. We left the vice president in place, and we said, act in a way that is appropriate in accordance with the law and our interests, or we're going to kill you. That's very different than a Bushy-era neocon regime change in Iraq. Even when we're talking about Iran, the Trump administration has not gone in a particularly overt way yet. But even there, we would be talking about a restoration of the Pahlavi regime, most likely, that goes back to 1925. So I grant there are all sorts of risks to interventions, but we're the global empire, and frankly, even the American Revolution comes out of wars of global empire. It comes out of the 7 Years' War, which itself was a derivation of the War of Austrian Succession. To pretend that we don't have a role in geopolitics is to ignore all of American history.
Okay, Karl Kalinske, I can see you grimacing through a lot of what Michael was saying there. You said Trump says the US will run Venezuela and he threatens Colombia and Mexico. Arrest this psychotic motherfucker. Before I get you to expand on that thesis, the point I was making to Dave, if I want to elaborate on where I sit with this, because I've had a bit of time to look at this play out, is you look at Maduro. Everyone thought, my God, this is going to be World War III. Actually, Maduro is going to end up in a New York courtroom and he's been got rid of. Everyone seems to agree that's a good thing for not just the Venezuelan people, but the world. No American troops died in what was an incredibly efficient surgical military strike to get him out of there. And if you have a more compliant leader of Venezuela, albeit part of the same regime, that can probably only be a good thing. If you look at the argument about Greenland, for example, I've been struck by some of the people that I didn't expect to think this was a good idea. It was a British general last week talking about this, saying that from a strategic security point of view, it would make perfect sense for America to have Greenland. And is there a deal to be done? He didn't think invading it was the right thing, and nor do I. But is there a deal to be done with 60,000 people who live in Greenland that could actually improve the security of the United States and the West against the obvious threat from China and Russia and so on? And I can go through the others. Iran, getting rid of the Ayatollah and the mullahs is unquestionably a good thing for the world. It's how you do these things and whether you plan and prepare properly for what follows next that I think are the debatable points. And history says that's normally, unfortunately, been very badly done. But this is what I meant when I said to Dave that I understand the argument. I may not agree with all of it, but I do understand the logic to what Trump is doing here. Do you?
No, because we don't have a right to act like this around the world. We're supposed to be a nation among nations, not a nation above nations. And they used to at least lie to us in the past and say that this is good for the world and we're spreading freedom and democracy. Now they don't even bother to lie. Now it's naked, rank, disgusting imperialism where they say, we're going to take the oil. And the point is that we're going to take the oil. We're going to take the minerals. We're going to take the precious metals. We're doing this for our corporations. We're doing it for the Epstein class, the billionaires. And this, to piggyback on what Dave Smith said, is frankly not what many of the MAGA voters thought they were signing up for.
I agree with Kyle here definitely, but I also just want to expand on the Greenland point. Like threatening your own allies with tariffs and potentially with military force is a disastrous move. I mean, the Truman administration also espoused this idea that maybe we can buy Greenland, but when Denmark said no, that was the end of discussion. So even if the US doesn't invade Greenland, still just threatening your allies with territorial invasion, it definitely, it pushes the EU more towards China. And I would argue at this point the EU should definitely, at least economically, establish closer ties with China. I mean, the reason why no previous administration threatened European NATO members with invasion is because it's such a disastrous move. U.S. imperialism in the past was definitely more rational. I mean, losing your allies is just not good, even from the perspective of expanding the empire. Yeah, that's what makes this so crazy. And also, I mean, Greenland is willing to have U.S. troops on its soil, so I struggle to see how is that not enough to deter Russia from invading. I mean, Russia obviously decided not to invade. For example, the Baltic states, because they are in NATO, and I think the same applies to Greenland. So yeah, I do think that there is a very simple explanation as to why no previous US administration threatened Europe with territorial annexation, and that is it's a disastrous move purely from a pragmatic perspective, and also starting a trade war over it will end up hurting the American people, the very same people that voted for Trump, and that allegedly Michael Knowles is on the side of the average guy that voted for Trump. Well, they definitely didn't vote for higher prices. Okay, I think I kind of said all that I needed to about this topic, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.